our Thursday here, gentlemen. Who is on the Mount Rushmore of Twins players we were nervous would become David Ortiz? So this is a list in the last 15 years, right?
Yep.
The Mount Rushmore of guys we thought would become the next David Ortiz and didn't.
And we've got two of them.
Kenny Vargas has to be on there.
Oswaldo Arcia has to be on there.
Yeah. Those are the two I got.
I led that charge.
Yeah, I was going to say this show talked about that seemingly endlessly at the time.
I actually think Chris Colabello deserves some consideration because the Twins, it was very controversial leading into 2015. Chris Colabello was mashing in the minors. He had kind of fallen back to earth in the majors, but I think there was a lot of nervousness about, dude, you can't let this guy go.
He actually played really well for Toronto in that ALCS run, too. He had a couple postseason bombs.
Yeah, you know why.
So,
dude, he hit.
Yeah, he was juicing.
This dude played 100 games for Toronto in 2015. He hit .321 with a .520 slugging percentage.
Juice.
I was never
In the playoffs. He had an 1100 OPS in the playoffs that year.
He was sweet that year.
I was never worried about him becoming the next Big Papi, personally. I never saw that happening.
I think he's in the mix in this discussion, though.
Who else do we got?
All right, here's some other guys I had on my list. Aaron Hicks. We were very nervous when Aaron Hicks got traded. A lot of people were very nervous.
I see when you put it in that context, it makes sense.
Yeah, the definition here is guy gets let go or traded by the Twins, and the initial thought is, oh my God, what if he becomes the next blank?
You guys didn't see John Ryan Murphy hit that home run off a perk with the Yanks.
That's right.
At Target Field. I think it was July of 2000-something.
Perk's never going to live that down.
No.
John Ryan Murphy was going to be the Johnny Bench for the Twins for years to come.
Yeah.
Okay, so Aaron Hicks.
So he's at least in the discussion. I'll give you another one because in retrospect, it may not seem that this guy belongs, but he was so good in 2010. He was the #1 overall pick. And the Twins kind of just he had a down year in 2011, the Twins, and he was kind of a pain in the ass. Delman Young.
No.
Delman Young was 25 years old. He had a huge season in 2010. And I do remember a lot of people saying, well, watch what's going to happen. He's going to go. He's only 25 years old. He's going to figure this thing out.
Clutch here in the postseason, just like Papi. Big time clutch here in the postseason.
He won the ALCS MVP, right? Didn't he?
He's got a ton of it.
I would put Aaron Hicks ahead of Delman Young, personally.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Delman Young was so despised by such a large group of Twins fans and probably media.
Drank.
That Aaron Hicks, I think I would put ahead of him.
Okay, so those guys are in the mix.
Yep.
This one might have just been me, and turns out I was kind of right. J.J. Hardy. J.J. Hardy had the wrist injury in 2010.
Oh.
I remember on the Royce and Mackey show, I said, listen, this dude's going to go to Baltimore and hit a bunch of home runs and do what he did in Milwaukee, and the Twins are going to regret this, and they did. They traded him for Jim Hoey. I don't know that he rises above Aaron Hicks for, oh my God, this guy's going to go somewhere else and be amazing. But he's in the discussion.
Yeah, I would say, so far the names that you've listed off, I would say Aaron Hicks is my top one.
What about
my third one?
Carlos Gomez.
Yeah, that's not a bad one. Yeah.
We were kind of sick of him because he swung and missed at everything, and he spin himself into the ground on strikeouts.
And the trade for Hardy was a good one, and then they botched that so badly.
Mm-hmm.
And then he clearly went on and had 4-year run?
Yeah.
5 years of being a pretty productive player. That's not a bad. That's a good one. I like that one a lot.
The other one that came to mind, and this might be wrong, but I feel like because the Twins kind of chose this guy over David Ortiz, and then he went to Washington, Matt LeCroy. But I think he kind of played himself out in Minnesota. Yeah. There wasn't any angst over him leaving.
Frank Robinson crying because poor Matt couldn't. What I believe the team that the Nats were playing were stealing bases on LeCroy left and right.
Yeah.
And Frank Robinson, Hall of Famer, 2-time MVP in both leagues, was reduced to tears by watching this guy play. He can't make the list.
It was really bad. Yeah, it was.
And I believe Patrick said, I think the story is that they designated Ortiz for assignment because they didn't want to lose Matthew LeCroy. I believe that's the story.
And LeCroy was fine. He wasn't a total bust.
He was just a good old country boy.
He wasn't David
That's
Ortiz.
what he was. He was a country boy. He could hit some, but yeah, I like Gomez and I like Hicks.
Okay. Dex, what do you think?
Those are my favorite.
Okay, so Vargas and Arcia are like the George Washington.
Yeah, they're cemented on there.
Okay.
I think Hicks probably deserves to be on there, and he hasn't. Now, the other guy who I'm thinking of hasn't left the Twins, but it's always going to be, and that's Miguel Sano. If they ever cut bait on Miguel Sano, that's going to be your number one comparison. In
I kind of like that because that has been the discussion every time. Judd and I 3 years ago on this show started down the path of, all right, I know Miguel Sano is this hot young commodity and he hit a bunch of home runs, but if you could trade him for blank, at the time it was Chris Archer. Like if you could trade him for a starting pitcher, would you do it? And the main response back that we would always get is, boy, if you trade him, he's going to be the next David Ortiz.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to at all be the next David Ortiz. I think he's a good power hitter. He's like he's Josh Willingham is what he is, and he can play first base. I kind of like that one.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, if they trade him, think about this for a second. If they deal him now, it's going to be after so many second chances, it's going to boggle the mind.
Yeah.
Like the patience that these guys are showing with this guy, and I know that he can hit mammoth home runs, and I know that at times it looks like he has a desire to be a good player, and I know that there's a huge or a large probably faction of the Twins fan base that will defend him and anything he does. But saying all of that, if this guy ever gets dealt, it's going to be, I would say, after a good 10 chances of and 9 screw-ups.
And, based on the hype and based on what he did as an 18, 19, and 20-year-old in the minor leagues, so he's 27 now. He's 27 years old. He only has about 100 career home runs in the major leagues, like 110, something like that.
Sure.
If I would have told you when Miguel Sano, as a 19-year-old, was hitting 28 bombs in 129 games, and then the next year at Double-A, 2013, as a 20-year-old, 35 home runs in 123 games in the minors as he's developing into his power. If I were to have told you 7 years ago, hey, he's only going to have like 100 career home runs at the age of 27, I think you would say, oh, thought he'd have more.
You'd be surprised.
Right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So, like, he's going to hit a bunch of home runs no matter who he plays for, whether it's the Twins or somebody else. But there is always that fear of, well, what if he's David Ortiz? You can't trade him.
The one thing I don't get about him is this. The power's fun, but why don't people get the fact that with this guy, it is always something? Like, that's the one thing I keep, and, anyone could go home to the Dominican and be accused of kidnapping. No, they couldn't. What are you talking about, right? Well, he was not guilty of that, so blah, blah, blah. It's like at some point in time, let's just all agree that if you're going to continue down this path, and it might be worth the gamble, I don't know, but if you're going to continue down the path that the Twins have gone down for a long time with this guy, that you have to be prepared for the fact that he's going to be the one kid in the class who the dog ate his damn homework almost every single time, and you just have to accept that.
So our Mount Rushmore of guys we are scared or were scared would become the next David Ortiz: Kenny Vargas, Oswaldo Arcia, Aaron Hicks, and Miguel Sano. We good with that?
That's a good one, yeah.
All right, I got one more for you guys.
Mount Rushmore is easy. It's the cliche Mount Rushmore Sports Talker of the Week with Mackey, Judd, and Rami.
That is why I would put him on the Mount Rushmore. Those would be my 4.
All right, this is off the Teddy Bridgewater discussion from earlier this week. Purple Daily, by the way. You can find our daily Vikings conversations on Apple, Spotify, and SKORNorth.com, and also YouTube.com/SKORNorth. The Mount Rushmore of great Minnesota sports player unknowns. So we're looking for players that either got hurt or fell off a map, or guys that we otherwise expected potential greatness from, and their story wasn't fully told because of some reason, or it just never happened for some other reason. And I think the 5 candidates right off the top of my head are Justin Morneau with the concussion in 2010. That was 10 years ago now.
Yep.
And it was like 10 years ago this week or last week.
Yeah.
Teddy Bridgewater is maybe the George Washington on this. Maybe Justin Morneau was. Sam Bradford and Dante Culpepper with knee injuries. We talked about them. And I'm going to throw Francisco Liriano in this discussion,
he belongs
too.
on there, 100%.
Yeah, that dude was the best starting pitcher in baseball on a staff with Johan Santana in 2006 before the injury. Who else belongs in this discussion?
How much
We're
of
looking
that
for 4
for him? How much of that was based on arm, and how much was based by the end of the day on his head?
Yeah, he definitely couldn't get out of his head after the surgery.
Like that was a very bizarre. To a certain extent, do you know who's a little bit like that from the Twins pitching staff as well? Scott Erickson. Go look at some of, I believe it was the first half of 91? There was a point where Erickson looked like a surefire Cy Young. This guy is unbelievable. The stuff is off the charts. And he started to break down, I think, had some arm fatigue, arm problems, and he also was in his head constantly, and the same thing, and he spiraled.
Yeah, I can tell you.
Compared to what he was.
Because I covered Francisco Liriano as a beat writer from 2010 through the trade, basically, in 2012 or 13. And I had, I can't remember if it was Rick Anderson or someone else on the staff told me one time, he's afraid, like if he gives up a home run or someone rifles a double down the line in the first inning, rather than just like shaking it off and thinking to himself, well, whatever, like I'm going to give up like 3 runs in any given start. Like it's baseball. It happens. These are the best hitters in the world.
Sure.
He would then sort of clam up and he would nibble. And you'd notice a lot if he gave up a home run or a double or something, he would oftentimes fall behind 1-0, 2-0 to the next hitter because he just didn't want to throw a ball over the plate. And the coaches would always tell him, dude, you drive a Ferrari. Like you throw 97 miles an hour still. Just throw the ball over the plate. And so they actually had at one point, they had Joe Mauer and other catchers in game. Instead of setting up on the corner or setting up like, yeah, you're going to hit this inside corner pitch, they would just, every pitch, they'd set up right down the middle so that they would drill into Frankie's head. Just literally throw the ball down the middle. You have enough movement and stuff.
That's Little League mentality.
Yeah.
That's the Little League mentality of Teddy doesn't know, so let's just set up right down the center of the plate. Question for you off of that point. Take Frankie right now, put him back in near his prime, and let's just say the arm problems have started, okay? He comes back. Current Twins staff, instead of the previous one in charge. How much potentially different is his story if these guys, instead of those guys, get hold of Frankie?
Well, I think he still gets hurt.
Sure. No, I'm
I
saying
think he still gets
but
hurt.
I'm saying so he's rebounding. So he's coming back.
Yeah. Yeah, he performs better. Like I think this front office and scouting department and field staff all the way through up and down, when compared to like the end of the Gardy Terry Ryan run of infrastructure, I think they just do a better job of empowering pitchers and getting the most out of pitchers, and they can confidently go to a pitcher and say, this is what works right now in today's game, and we're going to transform you. We're going to get the 97th percentile out of you, Tyler Duffy, right? We're going to get Taylor Rogers. Your peak is best reliever in baseball. We're going to get you close. Mm-hmm. And I think Francisco Liriano, even post-surgery, his peak was one of the best pitchers in baseball. In 2010, we kind of saw it, like his first full year back as a starter when the Twins made the playoffs. He was damn good. He had an ERA in the 3.5 range, struck out like 200 batters, was in the mix, I think, for Cy Young. He might have got some Cy Young votes or something. So I do think for many different reasons, like Francisco Liriano is part of this Mount Rushmore.
That's a good one.
So Teddy, Justin Morneau, Francisco Liriano, who else? I'll give you, this is kind of an obscure one because the Wolves drafted him, then traded him, then got him back after some knee injuries. So it's just mostly a Portland one, but Brandon Roy is a what if.
Yeah.
I don't think he counts for this because his what if is mostly Blazers based because his knee went out with the Blazers, but the Wolves then got him back like after he was out of Portland.
And Johnny Flynn was a McHale pick. Kahn wasn't here yet, I believe.
Well, Randy Foye was the
Randy
trade.
Foye. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
so Randy Foye
They
was
drafted
the guy.
Brandon Roy, and they traded him on draft day for Randy Foye.
Yeah.
And that didn't work.
One of the great trades of all time, name-wise.
Yeah. Stephon Marbury in this conversation? The what if not being injury related, but if he had stayed with the Timberwolves?
I got one for you. And this is the question of what if this guy applied himself? Andrew Wiggins.
Ooh.
Good.
If Andrew Wiggins had applied himself, so this is all mental. Like this is nothing to do with he didn't get hurt.
I love that one.
If Andrew Wiggins had embraced opportunity and
if he was more passionate,
had been passionate and worked his ass off and legitimately said, I am a top pick, I am going to come in and prove that.
I love that one.
What happens?
Yeah, he's one of the best players in basketball, right?
He's an all-star, yeah.
He's like Tracy McGrady. I mean, he scores 30 points a game, and I don't know that, like, his personality would have to change for him to be like the alpha dog on a team, but even just become a great secondary superstar, that might be it. I think the Mount Rushmore of great unknowns is Teddy Bridgewater's knee, Justin Morneau's concussions.
That for sure has to be on there.
Frankie's elbow, and then subsequent lack of confidence, and then Andrew Wiggins' demeanor and general lack of fire.
Are there more Vikings
Is Percy on that list?
Just because guys' careers do get cut short so much in that sport. Yeah, Percy's a good conversation. Like if Percy had been 2009 Percy for an extended period of time, I don't know that he knocks anybody off the list that we just did, though. That's my question.
Bryant McKinney? For the same Andrew Wiggins reasons?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's probably true. The only thing with McKinney was he didn't care, and he was still pretty damn good. Like that's the weird thing.
He was.
Like if this guy had given 10% of a damn about his sport, he's in Canton right now.
Yeah.
Like Bryant McKinney was a Hall of Fame left tackle. He just didn't really care.
Well, any consideration to Dante Culpepper?
No. I don't think so.
Yeah, I would say no because he did peak and then went back down. So the Teddy thing that intrigues me so much is it's all what if.
Yeah.
Like there's no well, we saw the peak.
Yeah, there might be some other Vikings out there. Like you could say Matt Khalil because of a knee injury. You could say
Pyology was a pretty damn good venture though, Phil.
Who's the Sharif Floyd? You could say, because of a botched knee injury.
Football is ripe for this because there's such a wide array of players who've had their careers cut short in that sport.
I don't know if I'd put any of those guys above the four we have, though. Teddy, Justin Morneau, Francisco Liriano, and Andrew Wiggins. That is our cliche Mount Rushmore.
It's the cliche Mount Rushmore Sports Talker of the Week with Mackey, Judd, and Rami.
That is why I would put him on the Mount Rushmore. Those would be my four.
Yeah.
So the list that we just gave, there are, I think, two potential, if they had achieved their maximum success, I think there's two potential Hall of Fame players there. Teddy, I don't know for sure. Morneau, I'm damn certain. I think if Justin Morneau plays another 10 years, he's probably going into Cooperstown. And here's a scary one. If Andrew Wiggins applies himself, if he had. He didn't come close, but
he'd be
damn did he have talent.
One of the best players in the NBA. So, and with the Warriors last year, he played the 12 games before COVID hit. And he was the same dude, man. Like he shot 45%, 33% from three, 19 points, couple of rebounds, like floating around.
The Wolves gave this guy every single chance.
Yep.
Like there's no, wow, I think they shortchanged it here. They gave him every chance and bailed quickly with Gerson.
I think the only wild ones you could include would be maybe Brent Burns, but I also think it was just more of coaching and management couldn't figure out what the hell to do with him.
Yeah.
And then injury-wise, I would put Pierre-Marc Bouchard as an honorable mention. He's not cemented on Minnesota sports. If you're looking at wild what-ifs, I think he is cemented because that guy from 20 to 22 was basically a 60-point center.
It's concussions, right?
And concussions just ruined his career, and he was out of the league by like 25.
Yeah.
The incredible thing about that team is the fact that they have had so little star power in 20 years that it's hard to come up with names.
Yes.
Like there should be, in 20 years, there should be what's fair. 3 people who you say, no question about it, if X, Y, and Z hadn't happened, this guy could have been a star. The Wild has had so little star power in their existence that you literally have to be like, PMB probably.
And by the way, cheap plug here, you guys had Billy Guerin on Judd's Hockey Show yesterday, which you can find Judd's Hockey Show episodes in a standalone podcast feed, Apple, Spotify, SKOR.com, or as part of the Mackey and Judd podcast feed as well. So Billy Guerin talking about a bunch of things, including the NHL's the schedule that came out yesterday has teams like the Wild that are looking to qualify for the playoffs starting in 3 weeks from now, beginning of August.
Training camp, if
they would report in 2 weeks, and then
training camp probably is going to start on Monday, and then I think they're going to start around August 1st with the qualifying.